Hello everyone. SwitchX has received some amazing changes with Title Update 4 and a lot more people are enjoying the weapon again. Full release, while far from dead, isn't the optimal DPS chain anymore and we can keep up very well with other weapons and finally use way more of SwitchX's kit. Even the long morph loop can deal some amazing damage with rapid morph, but rapid morph isn't a skill tax anymore and mostly used in comfy builds or builds that focus on a morph playstyle. Powerfile is still king for most matchups, but Element isn't too far behind, especially for the average hunter, and it allows for a bit more freedom when choosing your skills, since you don't really need power prolonger for Element files. RIP exhaust files though. The counter is better than ever, and the cancel out of charging FRS also unlocks new possibilities in gameplay, even though I think that change wasn't exactly needed. X mode has its uses in charging switch gauge, having the better mobility and the offset. The weapon is in a pretty good state right now, but it could be even better. With the huge amount of buffs we received throughout WoW's lifespan, and especially with Title Update 4, Capcom has proven they listen to us and we know we can influence our favorite weapon as a community. While the biggest issues have been addressed, mostly, I and many others think there is only one thing left: giving X mode the treatment that Sword mode received. I mean, we honestly don't need another list of this many buffs to make X mode great. Personally, I'd already be happy with a buff to Power X mode, just something to make it more rewarding. The buff in switch gauge gain is good, and I think it is worth it for that reason alone, given the fact that we have 4 different routes to activate Power X mode in Wilds, but the plus 10 raw damage could be improved to make X mode shine again. The simplest solution would be to just increase the damage buff. Ideally change it to something like 15%, because the plus 10 raw are decent, but as our power level increases, especially once we enter Master Rank, it becomes less and less important to our damage output. So a percentage based buff would stay relevant no matter how powerful we get in Master Rank. If we then get the part break modifier back on top of the damage increase and switch gauge buildup, we are golden. Or we get the file burst from Amped State on X mode if Power X mode is activated alongside Amped State. There are a lot of possibilities, and I think it is easy to do something to make it more rewarding. Also keep in mind that a buff to Power X mode would also buff our morph loops to a certain degree. In the pinned comment you can find exactly what I will write to Capcom if you're looking for some ideas how to approach the feedback form, and the link to the feedback form itself is in the pinned comment as well, of course. But I would appreciate it if you don't just copy my text and send it to Capcom, but if you actually use your own words and write what you want for SwitchX and X mode specifically. But just like last time, be sure to be nice and also try to mention how well received the buffs from Title Update 4 are. And thanks to Riot for bringing it to my attention again. Moving on from Power X mode, of course I'd also take a general increase in damage across X mode as a whole, but the move that needs something the most is Wild Swing. Right now, Wild Swing might be the worst DPS option you have with Switch X, which isn't even the problem, but this move also consumes your stamina, which will deactivate Max Might, for example. In order to make it at least usable or a somewhat interesting option, we either need a flat damage increase or a build up the more wild swings we do. Since this move is limited by our stamina, we should seriously get something for locking ourselves in position and depleting said stamina in the meantime. More damage on each swing, more switch gauge build up on each swing, faster and faster swings, or making heavy slam or morph sweep way more powerful depending on how many wild swings we do. Or all of it, why not? But right now, Wild Swing and even Wild Swing into Heavy Slam is one of the worst things you can do, even if you want to activate Power X mode. The most efficient way to activate Power X mode is the Sneak Attack, of course, and then the follow-up to Threshold Offsets or the Focus Strike finisher. You very rarely need to resort to the good old Wild Swing chain for Power X mode. Morph Sweep is one of the more committing attacks, and it is an option as a wake-up hit, or actually after an FRS, if Power X mode is active, so Morph Sweep is fine, I guess, but Wild Swing just needs something. Anything, really. And honestly, that's it. A buff to Power X mode, a buff to Wild Swing, maybe a buff to X mode attacks in general, just like we got it for Sword mode, and we're ready for whatever the expansion may hold. Keep in mind that I basically talk about realistic buffs we could receive before the expansion drops. I really want Soaring Wyvern Blade back as a follow-up to ZSD, and of course something new with Master Rank, but for that I'm willing to wait for what they have to offer. But to mention some more ideas, which also came from Riot, he talked about a buff to Rapid Morph in the form of a temporary damage increase and the ability to do a forward morph attack or directional morph attack after certain Axe attacks, which right now only chain into the Morph Double Rising Slash. And some extended hyper armor on FRS as suggested by Riven's Bane. Be sure to check the comments for other ideas and share your ideas as well, but most importantly, write into the feedback form what you want and specifically mention the mode, the move or the mechanic you would like to have adjusted. We did it before and we can do it again. Capcom is listening to feedback. And the stuff I talked about in this video isn't something that we desperately need or the weapon is ruined or whatever. Title Update 4 did so much for Switch X and I'm perfectly happy with the weapon right now, but we could use just a tiny bit more to make it even better. Ideally before we get into Master Rank. Or before we face Arch-Tempered Archveld. As I said in the beginning, I see people return to swags left and right, celebrating the buffs and changes made to the weapon, and the only thing that pops up now is I wish X mode received some more love as well. X mode has always been the utility and mobility side of Switch X, while Sword mode was the DPS or meta side of it. Sunbreak brought a morph loop for optimal sustained damage into the mix, and we could see a great balance between all three aspects in Wilds again. Maybe we can get some last additions with the final update in February with our combined effort. And if not, we'll see what Master Rank has to offer. Thank you very much for watching. A big thanks to everybody who filled out the feedback form the last time. Check the pinned comment for a link to the feedback page and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see for Switch X before we dive into Master Rank. Happy hunting everyone!